Alrighty, hello everybody. My name is Zosha Busey, and I'm the Vice Chair of DEIS Impact. As you all know, DEIS Impact is the week-long festival of social justice here on campus. We are 5 days in, and our event is being highlighted tonight with our keynote speaker, Nadia Alawa, giving her keynote talk, One Person at a Time, One Humanity Closer, Tackling the Syrian Crisis from New Hampshire. So just to get us started, as I said, this event is part of DEIS Impact Festival of Social Justice. And in the sign-in sheet, when you got in and you signed in, you will be entered into a raffle. Once you'll be sent a survey in your email. Once you fill it out, you'll be entered into a raffle to win cool prizes related to our keynote and related to other events. And the more DEIS Impact events you go to, the more raffle entries you get, and the better your chances are to win. So tonight we will have Nadia speaking, but before that we will have remarks from Lynch, our provost. We will have Jacob Edelman, the student union president, as well as Yi Wu, the chair of DEIS Impact, to introduce Nadia. So without further ado, let me welcome Lynch to the podium to give a little bit of
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. As Provost, it's my distinct honor to welcome all of you on behalf of Brandeis University to the 7th annual, can we believe it's 7 years? Yeah, I think there's a DEIS Impact. This is an amazingly unique Brandeisian event, and it's really like no other on our campus. A festival of social justice, and I have to say we really need more festivals of social justice these days. DEIS Impact brings the full range of Brandeis resources to the university's commitment to social justice. We've got rigorous intellectual exploration, the creative power of the arts, energy of community engagement, and the determination to be practical as well as visionary. Whether this is your first DEIS Impact or your 7th, I'm glad that you're engaged in social justice and action in all ways, large and small. Brandeis is a place where these kinds of conversations and actions actually happen. It doesn't surprise me to learn that when it was announced that Nadia Alawa was selected as the DEIS Impact speaker, right away, DEIS Impactor Chair Yi Wu and members of the Waltham group began planning a volunteer day at New Day, Syria, in New Hampshire as part of an October mini day of service. Brandeis students heard Nadia's TED Talk, and if you haven't seen it, you need to go and see Nadia's TED Talk. They understood more about the extent of the humanitarian crisis happening in Syria. These students took time to go to New Hampshire and help sort donations and pack a shipping container with no air in it, right? Packed it seriously. Bound for Syria with clothing, blankets, medical equipment, food, and even stuffed animals. I'm proud of our Brandeis students for engaging with the issues in and out of the classroom, learning more, thinking critically, and taking action. And as we talked about at dinner this evening, we'll take another group of Brandeis students up to Derry, New Hampshire, to fill some more containers with these very needed items. One of the most important elements of undertaking social justice in a university context is the conscious effort to marry deep reflection and analysis with positive and concrete action. Social justice should draw on our passions, empathy and principles, and I say outrage. But it should also be undertaken with the attitude of rigorous self-examination and humility, always conscious that good intentions are no guarantee of doing good. For this reason, Brandeis students are asking hard questions like, should we all have a common definition of social justice, or can we agree to disagree about its meaning? What should I do if I think someone is using the rhetoric of social justice to advance a position I think is counterproductive or even harmful? That is, if we agree to disagree about its meaning, what if my social justice comes in conflict with your social justice? There are many more questions that need to be asked in the context of social justice, and that's one of the things that I love about this university is that there will never be an end to this debate and discussion about what is social justice. And I'm sure that all of you will continue to have these debates not only here at Brandeis, but beyond your Brandeis experience. Debates and differing viewpoints are a big part of the discussion about social justice. I just hope as you engage with those around you on issues of importance to you, that you may find yourself disagreeing with them, that you always leave the door open for further debate, discussion, clarification, and most importantly, reflection. Whether it's the humanitarian crisis in Syria or any of the other social injustice issues tackled in the 34 events of DEIS Impact or the 5 open classes during the DEIS Impact College, we invite you to listen, learn, think, and act. Every voice is needed, every action counts in addressing the injustices we see around us. We're inspired by Nadia's presence tonight and look forward to hearing from her. So before we hear from Nadia, I'm pleased to introduce Jacob Edelman of the class of 2018. Jacob is president of our student union, if you didn't know that. And the student union is a partner in building DEIS Impact along with the International Center for Ethics, Justice, and Public Life at Brandeis University. Welcome, Jacob.
Thank you, Provost Lynch, for giving us a lot to think about. It's something that I think every undergraduate at Brandeis, at least, that I can speak to, thinks about quite a lot over their 4 years here. And thank you, Nadia, so much for joining us here at Brandeis in your time here. And I hope that the snow doesn't cause too much difficulty over the next period of time. So there are many terms which get tossed around, which bring up topics of, when bringing up topics of social justice in colleges, and I don't think that escapes any of us. The term that I don't think gets applied enough is celebrate. We celebrate at Brandeis for many reasons. In our buildings, we celebrate students and faculty who work together so closely on research that papers are co-authored in The Lives of Strangers can be made better. In our ears, we celebrate students who produce outstanding podcasts that go on to win awards and change the conversations surrounding everything from human rights to scientific trends. In our dorm rooms, we graph out plans to better educate our peers on topics ranging from personal finance to the Asian American and Pacific Islander experience. And all across our campus, we celebrate living by the quote of our namesake, "Neutrality is at times a graver sin than belligerence." This is the spirit of Brandeis. Through academics and expression, through culture and creativity, through activity and activism, we live and breathe social justice. So this week, we celebrate rejecting the label of social justice war and embrace the idea that social justice is essential and more than worthy of a festival. Years ago, Student Union President Herbie Rosen introduced the DEIS Impact Festival by stating, "I never saw a school so enthralled with social justice as I did on this campus. We as students need to learn to own the term social justice. It is not every day that a university as young as we are, as small as we are, climbs the rankings as one of America's top schools, translating the great Supreme Court Justice's life and legacy to a commitment to make an impact." He continued, "DEIS Impact is a time where we recognize, question, and discuss the unexplainable institutional love we have here at Brandeis for local action. And I would say that we own it, and that nights like tonight and weeks like this week prove that we will continue to own it." And now I would like to introduce DEIS Impactor Yi Wu, who will give an introduction to our keynote presenter.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here as a Brandeis Impactor and the chair for DEIS Impact. I'm gonna briefly introduce Nadia and my experience volunteering at New this year. As Syria's brutal conflict unfolded, one woman in New Hampshire decided to take action. Nadia Alawa founded New this year at her kitchen table in 2013. She has given a TED Talk and has been featured on CBS NECNS, The Morning Show, and the Boston Globe. In just 4 years, it has grown to a multi-million-dollar humanitarian relief organization. New Day Syria focuses primarily on those who are in need in Syria and Turkey. It helps people rebuild their lives through work opportunities, social business, and self-sustainability programs for women, along with supporting schools. New Day Syria sends 40-foot shipping containers of donations monthly from New Hampshire to northern Syria and the refugee camps in Turkey. It focuses on aiding widows, children, with a special interest in empowering women to be self-reliant. Thanks to support from Wathen Group and DEIS Impact, and a huge thanks to all members from Brand's Stand. Many community members like me got opportunities to volunteer at New Day Syria warehouse. Our volunteering work with New Day started from last summer. Before the first time I went to New Day Syria, I never envisioned Nadia, as the CEO of this multi-million-dollar humanitarian relief organization, to be the most dedicated volunteer there, sweating and carrying all these boxes on herself, led the entire group on her own, and to be the one who there makes sure every volunteer has a hot meal to eat and water to drink. That's the thing that Nadia impresses me most, that she's really there operating and supporting her organization by her own hands. I cannot remember how many times I watched her powerful TED Talk, and every time I learned something new from them. There's a part that strikes me the most when she said, "I cry, then I stopped crying, and everything changed. I became angry and decided to become catalyst for change. I no longer wanted to be a bystander. Whatever inhibitions I had, whatever the fear I had, they were gone. It became my mission to bridge the gap between Americans who feel helpless, like myself, and Syria, and mothers and children who so desperately needed us to care. I sat at rallies, I spoke to officials, I talked to the people on the street, as well as on the media. The things I never thought I would do, I did it because I had to do. With this quote in mind, I want to remind all of us that human catastrophes and the refugee crisis are worldwide. There are 5.6 million people who are forcibly displaced internally and externally worldwide, and among which 22.5 million are refugees, with hundreds of human stories heard and unheard. Nadia also mentioned her belief in globalized human help. While listening to Nadia's speech, I hope all of us could think critically about what privilege we have, what we could do as a college student and not to be a bystander, and how to empower those in need and not to undermine them. Now I want to invite Nadia, along with her husband and 6 children. Thank you so much for coming to Brandeis for this great keynote talk. Thank you.
My name is Alawa. I'm the second oldest of my 7 siblings, and today I want to share with you who my mother Nadia is. My mom is the founder and CEO of New Day Syria, an NGO working to better the lives of Syrian mothers and children affected by the current humanitarian crisis. Born and raised in Denmark, my mom has never actually lived in Syria. She grew up very Danish, but with a strong sense of globalness and of a whole world being one humanity.
We want to help other people that have no means to move. And in 90% of the cases of the people we help, it is women and children. And many of the children are orphans, which means many of the women are widows. They really don't have anybody. And when you hear what they need and how desperate they are and what's going on, it's like you can't stop, you know.
My mom's self-initiative and determination shines through in her refusal to be a bystander. Belief in the freedom of speech as a means to change society has always been core to my mom's life.
Because it's just too much what's going on. All they want is freedom and democracy. And that's just a basic human right.
With this value in her mind and Syrians in her heart, my mom started organizing rallies in Boston. She was determined to make her voice heard and to do it with the greatest impact she could, through her own example.
And I think every human being should care that somebody else does not have the right for freedom.
The past couple of years have been hard as the conflict in Syria hit closer and closer to home. One such tragedy was the loss of James Foley in August 2014. With the tragic news of his passing, my mom did not hesitate, immediately organizing a vigil in honor of James that not only paid homage to his life and his memory, but also denounced the horrific acts of a terrorist group. New Day Syria is currently renovating camps in Jisr al-Shaghur, where hundreds of Syrians have fled. Those living in besieged areas with little other aid are given relief through our crops and livestock initiatives. These unique and courageous projects provide Syrians with the necessary items to begin and maintain agricultural initiatives.
What we do is that we actually engage the community here in the United States where we work, and we have a diverse group of people. We build bridges and we let people know, the recipients, the mothers and children and families in general inside, that people care on the outside. People, they care so strongly and deeply that they are taking their children's items, toys or donations, money, their grocery money, and they're donating this and they're sending to you guys. And then we try to get that message out, that people know inside Syria that others care, and they might not be able to solve the political situation, but in the end, being able to give a little child a stuffed animal, or saving someone, a mother she needs to deliver, or having a child go to school, that's what brings hope. And if you can basically bring hope to one family, one child in a family, the whole family will know that people care on the outside. And that's what's going to, from day one, we knew this, that we would have different forces inside Syria, but bringing hope was going to overtake all the badness and all the ugliness, because hope is really the strongest feeling there is. Bear with me. Let's go back a few years. It's January 2011, and the so-called Arab Spring has sprung. The unrestrained voices of everyday citizens reverberate across many countries in the Middle East, demanding rights of freedom. Demonstrations are met with resistance and actual physical violence from governments unwilling to concede. For Syria, these protests did not begin until March. The courageous actions of a group of young boys was quickly punished with an iron fist, yet it was too late. The writing was already on the wall, literally speaking. A buzzing sense of revolution was in the air, a cry for democracy. Syria found itself out on the streets, assembling against oppression and hatred, advocating for their rights to freedom, liberty, and dignity. As we now know, what started out as a peaceful quest for freedom would very quickly and brutally turn into one of the worst humanitarian crises of our generation, one that has resulted in over 5 million refugees, 8 million internally displaced people, and hundreds of thousands of deaths. Amidst this, the Syrian people have mostly stayed resilient, united in their audacity against injustice, suffering through pain and loss. Good evening, everyone, and salam. Greetings of peace to you all. And please turn off your phones, obviously. What an amazing honor and opportunity to be this year's DEIS keynote speaker. DEIS is an inspiring effort with such a broad array of socially relevant topics and workshops with thought-provoking speakers and amazing performers, and I'm very excited to be here tonight. I'm also very humbled. My name is Nadia, and I'm a homeschooling mother of 8 children. I brought 6 live exhibits with me right here on the front row. And you heard another one up here, and I have an 8th one. I like to say that being a mother, I turned humanitarian aid activist, turned founder and CEO of international NGO New Day Syria, which is a 501c3 registered in New Hampshire. I want to obviously especially thank Marcy McPhee for her amazing outreach and communication to me for this event. She's been amazing. I want to give a shout out to Yi who has been instrumental in creating an actual bond between UD Syria and many of you amazing students here at Brandeis. Thank you to everyone for coming out here tonight. Tonight I want to talk to you about why and how I first became actively involved in trying to solve Syria's humanitarian crisis. I want to stray from a mere focus on the crisis and go on a more personal tangent, specifically how my involvement in humanitarian relief has evolved throughout my life and how this culminated in the founding of New Day. It is my hope that you'll all find some inspiration in my actions and in their ongoing results. Results that are based on empowerment and dignity of the Syrian people, as well as empowerment of ourselves as an integral part of our particular success. It is often in the small things that we can make a huge difference. It is by our own empowerment we tend to also empower others. It took years for me to become the humanitarian activist I am today, someone who considers dignity before pride and consciously makes the assumption that others are capable and powerful human beings despite their current humanitarian disaster, family loss, and personal despair. Although I am part Syrian, part Dane, my journey is not that of a Syrian Dane finding her roots, but of a woman with a diverse and advantageous background who wants to make a difference and who is constantly evolving alongside that process. I hope to share part of this journey with you all here tonight, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's start again. Back in March 2011, in Daraa, Syria, a few young boys spray-painted some graffiti on the walls of their school, proclaiming a desire to practice democracy, vocalizing the words of the majority, "Your turn has come, doctor." It was a call for Bashar al-Assad to step down. The response was an immediate, brutal arrest and punishment by government officials. But something else happened that week. Fear started turning to hope. The inherent fear of the boys' parents and of Syrians, the fear that for so long had stifled their voices, turned to hope. Hope for an actual change. Hope for freedom from an oppressive government. Hope has the ability to vanquish fear, to give us superpowers through a new vision. Upon the arrest of these boys, the Syrian government put their hometown on lockdown, the military closing off any paths out, machine guns pointed into people's homes. This violent reaction was the breaking point. Safe havens of homes. Homes now threatened for any individual freedom were no longer safe. Everyone suddenly had enough. Streets became the new meeting point as ordinary citizens came together to demonstrate and voice their opposition. The Syrian people wanted freedom from the regime. And just like that, fear turned to hope, united in a desire to build a brighter future for the children of the country. Syria was in a revolution. At the same time that this was happening, I was halfway across the world, oblivious to the personal revolution I would soon undertake. I had just delivered my youngest daughter, Jumana, and was busy being a mother and home educator. I lived in my cozy New Hampshire home with my loving Syrian husband, at least loving most of the time. While I myself am half Syrian, I have had little personal connection to the country other than through my husband's extended family, who lived in Syria's capital of Damascus. As an affluent city, Damascus was reluctant to change status quo, so the Syrian uprising and the humanitarian suffering hardly affected me personally, except it did. The Syrian Revolution and the concurrent humanitarian crisis began unfolding through social media. Sites such as Facebook, which I was just learning to navigate at the time, became spaces of protest outside of the physical streets. The bravery of Syria and her citizens, the suffering of mothers, the loss of childhood, it was all there, intermingling with the cat videos in my newsfeed. I was passively observing the demonstrations in Daraa or Homs as words were met with bullets from Syrian soldiers. Watching. I saw the suffering of mothers, unable to breastfeed their infants out of stress. And I saw the young children now living in towns besieged by the government, deprived of basic food and water. The images kept me up at night and haunted me during the day. My quest for constant news on Syria's demonstrations and the deprivation of people later pushed me to join one of the solidarity rallies in Boston. Prior to this gathering, I had only ever attended one demonstration for fun as a teenager in Denmark. Standing in Boston streets, walking along a few hundred people united in a desire to do something, to vocalize their condemnation of the Syrian government's actions, I realized I had never fully practiced my freedoms in the traditional sense. I was born and raised in Denmark, a democratic country. We grew up knowing that democracy was vital, but I had never actually practiced the most democratic of all actions. I had never cast a vote. By the time I was of voting age, I was off to Japan with my new husband. It's the same husband. And then I moved to the States where I did not have voting rights, and it had never occurred to me in 25 years to cast an absentee vote as a Danish citizen. I had never voted as an adult, a fact I regret, since democracy is nothing if we do not practice. Standing there in the Boston rally, I realized that it was weird, hypocritical almost, to be rallying for the freedom and democracy of Syrians without ever having reflected and acted on these rights myself. Yet as I stood there, I realized also, democracy to me is not simply an act. It is a process of recognition and thought, one that has been instilled in me from the moment I was able to speak. From a young age, I made the decision to never live in a cocoon. I didn't need one to make me feel safe. On the contrary, I felt claustrophobic about any such idea. The whole world was of concern to me. I refused to follow the rules unless I had reasoned them out myself. As a well-read and independent student, I was not afraid to challenge viewpoints in class. I quickly picked apart arguments, rebutting with opinions that were fully and thoroughly my own. I was respectful and constructive, but provocative as well. My teachers made sure to support me, encouraging debate and making me realize that my voice mattered in the classroom and also outside of it. That was what democracy came to mean for me, the ability to speak, to participate, and to organize without fear of threat. At 13, I voiced my concern with the starvation that was happening in the so-called big continent of Africa. The United Supportive Artists for Africa had just released music for the cause. You may remember We Are the World, or It's Christmas Time. For my teenage self, the songs were mind-blowing. All of these artists were calling me, calling us, to do something for the entirety of Africa. I absolutely had to do something. Sensing a call to action, I began to consider the many ways I could help. Since I could not send my leftovers, and thank God I never tried, I decided to start a money collection. I rallied my classmates and teachers, and together we went door to door, asking for change. Just 2 weeks later, I had collected $1 million. Well, at least it felt like $1 million. In reality, it was $300, but to me, it felt like I had solved the problem. Although I never saw the impact of my involvement, and it's obvious that it was minimal, I was on top of the world. I then resumed my teenage life with a sure feeling that I had done some part. Fast forward to when my first child is born. At 20 years old, I was aware that I was young, but building my own family was all I really wanted, and no obstacles of convention or societal expectations would prevent me from doing that. I knew it was perceived as uncool. I was the product of 70s feminism after all. Back then, feminism meant that there was one way of being a quote-unquote empowered woman. Being an at-home mother was frowned upon. A good feminist was expected to join the formal workforce. No room was made for choice. This is a huge turn from intersectional feminism today, which understands women as independent actors from all spaces of backgrounds. Women are encouraged at any choice they make. We are free agents allied together for positive change. My husband and I had moved to Japan for a PhD opportunity he had, while I started my bachelor's from Copenhagen University. Not speaking the new language very well was often isolating, so I sought mutual comfort through fellow English speakers who came from across the world. Bosnia was unfolding. and a fire in me was simmering. Bosnia was different to me than the hunger issue. All of a sudden, I saw women who looked like me being dehumanized and systematically raped by their landsmen. Young boys, who could be my sons, were being killed, and men murdered for no reason other than their religion and ethnicity. The genocide was eating away at my soul. I remember feeling helpless at that time, as well as protective of my own new family and the responsibility I felt as a mother to my children. What could I possibly do that would make a difference? I knew I had to do something to make my statement in the conflict. So I did my activism the only way I felt I could. I severed ties with my English-speaking Croatian friend. It might seem silly, but for me at the time it was a deep sacrifice. By ending this friendship, I was personally taking a stand against her many statements in support of the actions of Serbian perpetrators, the brutal violators and murderers of Bosnians. While dialogue was and remains something I held dear, I'm an adamant believer that actively condoning the aggressions of a group based on race, religion, ethnicity, or other identities is a deal breaker. I would rather be alone in a strange country than drink tea with someone whose values were entirely counter to my basic humanitarian principles. My dedication to Bosnia did not end there. A few years later, our small family moved to the United States, and an intensely hectic year unfolded. I was finishing my undergraduate degree and immersing 3 young children into a new culture and language, all while, you probably guessed it, I was pregnant, this time with baby number 4. Bosnia was still in the news, but now I was living in a small town, upstate New York, and language was no longer a barrier. Bosnian refugees lived in the area and were adjusting to their new lives as Americans. I spent that first year here in the US collecting donations and sending funds for Bosnia via a huge international organization that could barely be bothered to talk to me, a nondescript supporter and donor. I've never felt a connection to any big NGO. I don't even know if my $300 for Africa or the few $1,000s collected for Bosnia ever made its way out of the US. It likely didn't. My efforts were self-serving. They let me sleep at night. At the same time, it was my first foray into testing my power as a member of humanity and to take a stand against being a silent observer. I want to make a distinction between activism for the self and activism for humanity. The two are not necessarily exclusive of each other, but activism for humanity considers the beneficiaries on a more equal level rather than as someone at the top doling out aid and advice to others below them. I felt very selfish during some of the earlier years. I was occupied with creating the perfect childhood for my children, but still, an emptiness presided within me that was momentarily filled with my acts to help. Although we were not yet fully fledged US citizens, my husband and I were able to enjoy the benefits of an elected democracy without any major strings attached. I felt as though I was taking, not actively participating and being part of a broader solution. My collections for Bosnia were a feel-good remedy, but even in doing so, I knew there was something more. I wanted to engage, not for myself only, but for the greater humanity, for people who were not unempowered per se, but who were in the wrong place at the wrong time. Slowly testing the waters, I was learning more about my independence and influence as a thinker and actor besides my identity as a mother. It was difficult for me to envision a role for myself outside of my carefully crafted family, especially in how I would change the world, or could change the world. What I was lacking was a sense of an actual personal calling that was as strong as that of wanting to be a mother, something else that would make me feel as empowered and enabling of others. The sense of organically growing up empowered is something that is beautiful and unique to the core of America. Americans are shapers and builders coming together for a united, equal society. We are grounded in the concept of voluntarism and of being part of building our community and our world. Each and every voice counts, whether that be expressed through a political rally, participating in a school meeting, or even through simple conversations. We do tend to take for granted what we have: the right to vote, the right to gather and talk freely, the right to stand on a podium and speak about issues we care about, the right to practice or not practice our religion. Strangely enough, it took me standing in a crowd screaming, "Freedom for Syria," to fully grasp this privilege. When the Syrian Revolution happened, something awoke. I could no longer be a bystander. I had to become a vessel for freedom to reflect the call for action emanating from Syria. I was humbled by the bravery of so many Syrian women and men, young people and children, older folks as well as Dutch military folks. I was proud of how these Syrians united across religious labels, socioeconomic wrongs, and geographic backgrounds. I felt a calling to be part of their story as it was unfolding, but I also knew that I was an outsider and as such had to take their collective lead on where my role would best be. I would wake up in the middle of the night with my heart beating strong for the mothers whose children were suffering or had been arrested by the government. I sensed a sudden change inside of me, a change that eventually would lead to me breaking even my own barriers of comfort in order to speak out, act, and bring forth an attempt for change. I felt an emerging calling, a need to be a tool for the mothers and children whose lives were being shattered and changed so drastically by this quest for free thought. With the Syrian Revolution, I was myself emerging from all kinds of fear. Fear from exposing our Syrian family name and causing potential harm to extended family members in Syria. Fear from watching people on social media getting killed. The option of looking away seemed to no longer apply as the suffering was real and increasing day by day. More difficult, though, were the fears related to myself, but somewhere along the lines, these fears no longer seemed to matter. The strongest personal challenge to overcome for me was the fear that I would endanger my capacity of being an active mother to my children. I used to ponder whether or not I would stop my car on the highway if I saw someone in need of help. And I knew that the answer would be capital N for no. There was no way I would risk my own life if I could help it to save someone else's. I was a mother and my children needed me. When Syria happened, a subtle shift occurred. Watching children in need, wounded or even dead children, my view of motherhood expanded dramatically. We're not always in charge of what happens to us, but we are responsible for our choices. While my 8 children only have one biological mother, that mother was starting to sympathize so strongly with the mothers of Syria that the Syrian children became a very intricate part of our own nuclear family. My role as a mother was as important as the role of any Syrian mother. We all love our children, and we all want to protect them and keep them safe, if we can help it. This change in perception of my importance as a mother has been profound. I'm not willing to carelessly put myself in harm's way, but I will carefully stop my car if anyone is in need on the highway. The humanity of my children and that of others has been put into perspective for me, and it has enriched and humbled me and my family in so many ways. The bond of motherhood extends across the ocean to Syria, and I think many people start to feel that way as they hear and know more about Syria. Our humanity is one, and the concept is really so simple. So for me, there I was in 2012, no longer that afraid, awakened. The natural next step, of course, make a nonprofit. That's an oversimplification, to say the least, and it would be a year of deliberate and planned humanitarian efforts before New Day Syria was founded in a matter of days. In the end, it felt like everything I had ever done, all led up to that day in February 2013, when I woke up with a motto and knew exactly what our mission would be: to empower and aid mothers and children inside their homeland with dignity. Founding an organization was never a romantic dream of mine. On the contrary, when I became an active humanitarian activist, I initially wanted to focus on what I found myself doing amazingly well: gather people for a cause, encourage them to donate and to get outreach and support for Syria's mothers and children, while at the same time posting enough photos and updates on social media so that we all felt connected to the humanitarian process of helping and creating change. I called myself a freelance humanitarian activist because I really did think that I could continue my efforts via other established organizations. What unfolded was a lot different, though, and it slowly became apparent to me that many organizations, even the well-meaning ones, have a very intricate bureaucracy and lack of transparency. As a woman, I was met with many male peers from various organizations who felt the need to prove their male superiority by belittling me and my voluntarism, while at the same time benefiting from my tireless efforts and using the network I was creating for aid and projects in Syria. By the end of 2012, I had my own robust network in Syria, built cautiously and slowly via local contacts and the spider web that is the Syrian opposition and personal contacts. My networks have never been founded in cyberspace, nor would I ever recommend such a method. Nor have my networks been built in an office with sophisticated and degreed outsiders using fancy words and creating non-personally vetted contacts inside war zones. All New Day Syria contacts are triple vetted independently by multiple people I trust and who have proven themselves. We work closely with the local councils in Syria, but never let anyone dictate to us who should or should not work or how to run things. We make an effort to keep open lines of communication. Through our local coordinators who work out of our field offices, we have the opportunity to hear from the people that benefit from our work and get their feedback and needs firsthand. As a mother and woman, I'm relentless in what I require of my staff. They need to value humanity, transparency, be multitaskers and critical thinkers, always speak the truth, and be brave enough to question intent and purpose, even within the organization as appropriate. We do not tolerate sexism outside of the basic cultural norms, and our staff and recipients know that. We have created a space that is safe enough for our mothers in Syria to come to us with complaints of even sexual harassment, something that is not tolerated by any measurements. We have acted immediately and removed harassers, and we have also modified our internal and staff policies to increase awareness and space around the safety of women. This issue was certainly not part of the NGO plan, but as a woman running the show, so to speak, the last we need is a show of empty values and words. Many of you here know about New Day Syria from our humanitarian aid containers. I like to call them our vessels of love and hope. I've seen many of you in container action during one of New Day's volunteer days, and as often happens with our volunteers, you come out, work tirelessly and independently on sorting and packing, and leave feeling utterly exhausted but so inspired. A month or two after each container, photos are posted on social media of the items arriving to Syria, and every once in a while we get to laugh over a familiar toy or some child wearing a funny-looking jacket we remember sorting. It was these containers that lay the part of the very foundation of the formal organization New Day. People were in love with the grassroots and personal style of New Day Syria, and this sense of feeling connected is something that has been vital to me. I've never wanted to be a big NGO for the sake of being big. Growth had to be organic and from the ground up, not top down. Even at the start of New Day, I was reluctant. Running a nonprofit, especially at the scale of New Day Syria, is a lot of work. And with all the other organizations working in Syria, I was hopeful of collaborating with them. However, as New Day progressed, it became obvious that we were going to be our own change maker, with me in the driver's seat, for now at least, and with like-minded people supporting us, working alongside Syrian people as equal agents, not as delegates of aid and charity. We are firmly in charge of the program development and distribution process, and we run New Day as a formal nonprofit organization and all that entails. But at the same time, we see our Syrian staff members as our partners, not as our subordinates. The so-called beneficiaries that are the recipients of our work are considered our dignified peers and working towards the goal of empowerment rather than charity as an integral part of us all. It's not my goal to pat you all on the back and say, go start your own nonprofit when you see a conflict, because let's be honest, that's hardly a solution. Instead, it is my goal to have you question the humanitarian process and become more critical of how such organizations work. Namely, how is the beneficiary and the organization culture? Is it a pyramid structure? Is it a group of better knowers saving the lesser knowers, or what? This distinction between giver and receiver is one that is blurred at New Day. Working with Syrians on the ground to shape our activities means that New Day is the combined effort of Syrians and Americans. We do not merely provide aid to people in need. We know that the people inside Syria who have been affected by the crisis could be anyone. Syrians are not disempowered. On the contrary, they are the epitome of courage, standing strongly by their beliefs and recognizing that they have the ability to change their country. We are simply trying to be their outside partners in their own internal process. New Day Syria is well known for our fast action to impact change, for our minute requirements for documentation of many kinds, and for not allowing male dominance issues to thrive. Our mission is specifically to empower and aid mothers and children inside Syria with dignity. As such, we have not chosen an easy task. We never take the easy way out. Instead, we want to make a difference where it is felt the most. We are willing to jump the highest if it means that a mother or her children feel better about themselves and have gained hope and confidence, and not just a physical bag of clothes or a food basket. Our donations here from New England are building tangible bridges of love and hope and diplomacy. 10 years from now, no matter the political or military solution in Syria, we will have all these beautiful grown Syrian children who will attest to having gotten a stuffed animal from someone in the US, or who survived winter with sleeping bags they received from New Day Syria. These kids will be full of love for others and for humanity, and they will never be blindly following policy agendas or hateful rhetoric. The schools at New Day Syria has built and run encourage critical thinking and develop independent change makers. Our students and their friends get to ride bikes donated by families here in New England. These children, both boys and girls, have classes in computer science and do interactive lessons with students and mentors here, all whilst their country is falling apart and eventually, hopefully, getting rebuilt, this time with its children growing up with a global mindset of peace and freedom. And our motto, one person at a time, one humanity closer, did come to me one morning when I woke up. It represents what the organization means to me, an awareness that any person, be it me, you, my neighbor, can be a catalyst for change, bringing together all people for a greater cause, even across differences. My children used to tell me that it sounded cheesy and fun. But what is actually fun is that today, they see the motto in action and feel it to their bones. Whether my kids are helping out or playing at a container day or join me for a presentation in a church or temple, they see and feel their own and others' humanity. My kids see all these people from all walks of life here in America come out to find a way to help others in need in a country that might seem so far away, yet it is not. My 7-year-old daughter, Jumana, has grown up watching us extend a hand for Syrian children, and she will herself, on a regular basis, go through her stuffed animals and clothes and select the items she's no longer really using and instead wants to share with friends in Syria. She likes to share because these kids are her friends, or could be, were circumstances different. So sharing she does. When I tell her how my own stuffed teddy gave me a sense of security, and when she holds her own tiger teddy, she knows that she's making a difference as she sends off teddies for Syria. Jumana and her brother Hadi are going to change a life with each teddy. And this is why I believe so strongly in New Day Syria. It gives us a tangible way to believe that humanity is one that we hold within us as we slowly make our mark in the world. That is what New Day was founded on and what it continues to aspire to be. An organization transparently accomplishing its goal through a confidence in the unitedness of people. One person at a time, one humanity closer. So what I hear is that we are now doing Q&A. Yeah? So if you have a question, raise your hand, and I think we have 2 volunteers with microphones. So obviously somebody has to bring up the first question. Who will it be?
What were some of the challenges that you encountered when you were starting your NGO?
Sorry, please repeat that.
What were some of the challenges that you encountered when you were starting the NGO and getting the certificate, I assume?
Some of the challenges, what were some of the challenges? Sitting long enough to read all the formalities of how to start a nonprofit and filing that, because there were other things that were more interesting and fun to do, was some of the challenges. So the fun part of starting the organization was that I had been part of some other organizations prior to starting New Day Syria, and I also had been recruited for other organizations, and I knew that we did not have time for a lot of talk, and then I had a lot of support from the people that initially were my board. So we just started running. So some of the initial challenges, you know, we probably dealt with them a few years down the road, you know, more paperwork, getting more in order, getting very formalized. So that is a challenge because it's not so much fun maybe, but then you start to develop different sides of yourself that you didn't know. So, yeah. Yeah, we have a question over here.
How do you keep from having, or has it happened that people will infiltrate your organization in Syria? That you will find that there are people there that are working at cross purposes and trying to undermine your work. Has that happened? And if it hasn't happened, do you anticipate it happening?
If an organization tells you that they haven't been infiltrated or had bad actors in their pathways, they're lying. Because, of course, you come across bad guys, and the whole issue is, are you going to weed them out, or are you going to pretend you didn't see them? Because before you improve your structure, obviously. I was involved with other organizations, so I saw firsthand other organizations where stuff was happening. And then when something happened to our organizations, probably in the second year, I dealt with it very swiftly and very motherly. So it was not pretty from their perspective, but you know, it created a lot of fear, which I like. It's good. It's good. Last year we had a semi-major incident with a woman who was sexually harassed, or it was maybe 2 years ago, inside Syria, and you know, she felt safe enough to come to us and tell us about it. At the same time, there are many safety issues. There are her safety issues, the organization's safety issues. So instead of confronting him and being very direct, because I like direct confrontation, I had to get, you know, rid of the person in a different way. And he was actually one of the people that worked for us, and he had put her in a very bad situation. And I was like, you know what, if that happened in this incident, this is one of our guys. This is not like something random. It's one of our guys. And if it happened in that incident, it means that it's obviously happening, you know, in other places. Open your eyes, guys. So we put, you know, policies in place and made sure, for example, that none of our people can go and, you know, out to people in need on their own. They always have to, you know, be partners and stuff like that. So we put different policies in place. Sometimes, you know, those conflicts are fun to deal with. As long as you make sure that the players are, you know, the victims obviously are safe. And in this incident, we had to remove him without giving him the reason. And some months down the road, when he started suspecting why he had been removed, we had to get a little bit uglier with him and get rid of him in terms of verbally saying, we are going to expose you, blah, 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 right? So we try to be very swift about that when we see stuff happening.
Because I have the mic.
You have the mic, you have the power.
How did you find the particular towns or the particular camps that you're working with? And have you always worked with the same one since 2013? The main focus of our work is inside Syria, and I want to clarify also that in Turkey, we work with schools, we work with children and mothers, but we don't do container work in Turkey. It's all happening inside Syria. Containers go to northern Syria, but we work in different areas inside Syria. Right now, we're pretty much in the same areas, but for example, in 2013, we were the first organization to go to eastern Syria in the area that's now that's Raqqa that you have known in the news about that was taken over by ISIS, for example. Before there was ISIS, there were people in need. So we were working there, and that has been an area where we pulled out completely. When ISIS started moving towards the area, we were told that they'll be gone in a month. We're going to the opposition is going to defeat them. So we put a container, for example, in storage, actually. We had a container earmarked for that area. And then when ISIS took over the area, we were like, we just have to move out of that area. We're not going to be negotiating with these people. Up in northern Syria now, we are in very unstrategic areas. We have moved out of Aleppo, for example, about a year and a half ago. That was obviously hard, but there's some things you have to do because you have a mission, you have an organization. This is not something about being sentimental. This is about reaching as many people in need as possible. So yeah, we move around, but we move around when we have to, but we have been very, like the areas we're in now in northern Syria and Idlib, very close to the border. We've been there for a while, and we still work in besieged areas near the capital. But of course, we stay flexible and we evaluate all the time.
You probably already got this question a lot today, but I kind of want to just ask it because I want more people to hear it. So my question is, you're working with some deeply frustrating topic, the sad pictures and posts on social media, and then we see the news all the time about all these people suffering every day. And also, I believe when you're doing this project, there are a lot of frustration going on with the project as well. So what motivates you that the second day you wake up in the morning and say, I'm still motivated, I'm gonna do the thing I'm doing now, I still have energy to do whatever I'm doing? Yeah.
So the question is about how to stay motivated and empower yourself so you can empower others. And it's a great question. Burnout is real. Burnout in all sorts of life, but especially when you work with human beings and in crisis, in a humanitarian crisis, burnout is real. So for me, I try to, in general, the way, when I need to get the news also, I try to get enough news to not deflate completely the way I'm feeling or how I should be feeling in order to be efficient. As you heard from at the start from my TED talk, that I watch the news to a degree, but then I don't watch anymore because I have to keep going for others in order to be effective in the mission I'm doing. There are days, and now there are many different kinds of being tired and being burned out and being exhausted. And the way I get re-energized is in particular to take some time out and go look at the work I'm doing. Many of you go look at the pictures. Sometimes I have to take a time out and just sit and enjoy what we do, or remember specific incidents. Sometimes we help, obviously, every month we help thousands of people, but sometimes these people, they get a name and a face. There's one particular story that always humbles me and gives me goosebumps. Some years ago, maybe it was 2 years ago, I was looking at photos. We had, sent items, specifically items for one of the schools that we are supporting. So the children had gotten a stuffed animal and some school supplies. And I was looking at all these pictures, and then there was this picture of these two small boys, 6 years old, sitting at a school desk with a stuffed animal and a pencil or something. And one of the boys, he had this huge, huge eye. He looked like a cartoon character. Eyes always matter to me because my two twins, they've always had an eye issue. And this was obviously an issue. I looked at the picture, and then right away, I spoke to our coordinator there. I said, get the details on this particular boy. What's the situation? So it turned out, that the boy had a genetic disease, and obviously had lost the eyesight, and he was from a very, very poor family. And when they went to talk to him and his family, they found out that his younger sister, who was 9 months old at the time, had the same genetic disease. So within 1 week, we got this boy seen at a medical hospital that's right at the border, where a lot of international doctors actually go. So it's a little bit a bigger hospital. And they took him in right away, even though he wasn't an emergency, but obviously I wanted him to be seen. So they removed his eye and gave him an artificial eye instead, because he had lost eyesight, and they helped save the other eye. But for his young sister, it was literally like a matter of a couple of weeks before she would have lost eyesight in her eyes. And because of this intervention, we saved her eyes and they were treated. This was because of a stuffed animal, okay? It really, really was. And it's like the story, I love it. So, I have to once in a while remember, even if for nothing, this girl, we saved her eyes, and we gave this boy relief, and that's wonderful. Okay, so let's wait. We have a question over there to the right first. Okay, all right.
Thank you so much for your inspiring talk. One thing I was wondering about is it's very easy to see all of the atrocities that happen in the world and just feel like so crippled by inability. So what advice do you have for people who just kind of see everything on their news feeds and just don't know where to begin to, kind of like release that desire to impact and, make some kind of difference?
Were you here for the talk? That is exactly why I say one person at a time. If you reach one person, you cannot change the world. You can do what you can do. I don't go and look at the whole situation of Syria and say, I can't change all of that. I focus on what I can do. Even if you have some local refugees here that don't speak English and they can't get a job and you help them, that's something. That's major. Find something that you can do where you have success and it will build on its own, and you will see what I mean. You can also even, find crises in other parts of the world that you can get involved with. You can't get involved with all of them, and you can't sit and think, I can't solve all of this. You will find something that's good, that matches up with your personality, what you can do. And it might change in 5 years, right? So look at what you can do, not at what you cannot do. Yeah.
Nadia, I was wondering if you could just tell us a little bit about some of the ways that you're supporting businesses and individuals trying to become self-sufficient in Syria. It just strikes me that the infrastructure is obviously totally decimated. So where do you begin with that? What kind of businesses can be viable in Syria right now?
So a lot could be done. We are not right now in the spot where we're having a huge impact in terms of helping businesses start up again. I'm not going to pretend that we're doing all of that, because our focus right now is on the containers and schools and on reaching out as much as we can. But I can give you some examples of what we have done that have been incredible. In the video you saw that they were moving a bulldozer around. We were actually building homes. We built 90 homes in one area. And this is an area that was a mountain ledge, and people were living in tents. And I was like, well, tents and homes is almost the same price, right? But anyway, the short story version is that we ended up building 90 homes and a school and a mosque that's like a community center in this, mountain ledge. And Syrians were able and very, very capable of designing those basic homes, because we didn't have a lot of money, obviously, and of producing the materials inside of Syria and giving all these people work for, I think, 6 months that it took. They were very capable. It was amazing. We have a water tower in Idlib that had been out of function for 5 years. It got bombed, 6 years ago. And it provides running water to people's faucets. You turn on the tap. You don't have to walk with a bucket or send your child. It's in your home. The water turns on. Very, very revolutionary, right? And we renovated, that water tower, and that was also something that they were totally capable of doing, even under these circumstances, going into the ground and, getting whatever they had to do. And then I have a more recent example. This week we've just started a sleeping bag project that we've done different projects where, social business projects, something like that. But they all require, sewing machines or knitting or something not very fancy. But what we have started this week is actually a collaboration with the White Helmets, where they have an actual factory, which is maybe 20 or 30 industrial-sized sewing machines. And they're going to, be sewing actual sleeping bags for New Day Syria. So it's not like I don't own the project, unfortunately. Usually I like to be like, I'm into everything. But collaborating with a group like the White Helmets, it's wonderful. And it supports, their rescue efforts and getting sleeping bags made and, getting the business done inside Syria instead of originally, the sponsor originally, or the donor, he was thinking, oh, shouldn't we just buy them, the sleeping bags in Turkey? I was like, why don't you wait 5 minutes? Because if we can get them done in Syria, it's so much better. I mean, it's good for the economy, it's good for people's self-esteem, it's good for everybody. So the opportunity is there, we have the capabilities, yeah. I think Marcy has a question. And then there was one over here. I think you came first.
So before Judy Dushku and in my personal life and E.E. Wu in my professional life introduced me to New Day Syria, we were looking in my community for a way to get involved in Syria and found a trucking company that was willing to connect with a shipping company and get things into Syria. And we thought, well, this is great. We found our pipeline. We can start to make a difference in this vast humanitarian crisis. And they pulled out because it was far too dangerous. How were you able to do what it seems to me very few organizations can do in a very dangerous area?
So of course I don't know the details of the people you spoke with. So, I mean, there's no big magic to what we do. I mean, we work with US Customs, we have all the paperwork, so that's not the issue. You are thinking more about like getting there, being inside. The Turkish government many years ago said that they would collaborate with organizations that wanted to bring humanitarian aid via containers into Syria as long as the items were not distributed in Turkey. So once you do the paperwork and pay customs and do all the clearance in Turkey, then you don't have the problem there. We have never paid bribes. We have never done anything like that. We did 2 containers through Lebanon. They were supposed to go to an area, actually, in Lebanon, inside Syria, and also in Lebanon. The first container, no bribery, nothing. And Lebanon is a country with a lot of corruption. The second container, not so lucky. The organization we were collaborating with, they decided, oh, the container is here. You guys are over there. This is for Lebanese people. I mean, Lebanese people is great, but this was obviously for Syrian refugees to relieve the pressure on the Lebanese government. So we pulled out of Lebanon. The situation in Lebanon, for example, is extremely bad for Syrian refugees. But I have to say that I have to move on. I mean, I can get through Turkey with no problem. I can get into Syria, and I can help the people up in the north. And as you know now, there's still an influx. People are still moving inside. They're still going up to the north. So it's not like the need is not there. The need is there. We make sure that we help many people. We don't help in specific camps. Like our work, we are located in specific areas. In the north, we have 2 offices, for example, in specific schools. But our people, they go to different areas. They go and they seek out people in need. They'll go and look, where's the minority group? Or, we made Christmas happen one year, for example. There were many Christian Syrians have left Syria because they had the means to do it. And there was one particular village close to the area where we lived where there was a monastery. So there were still people living there, and they didn't want to leave. They were like, Syria is for all Syrians. I mean, they were like with everybody else, right? I mean, there's no distinction. So one time, in December, our coordinator there, he contacts me, and he's like, do you mind if we give out gifts to these? There were like 20 children or something in this teeny tiny village that nobody knows about, nobody hears. I mean, it's not like to make Christmas happen for them. And I was like, are you asking me? Of course you can do that. Like, you know, we would love to do that because we would love to help everybody. If we can find them, of course we'll help them, you know. So our team knows that we care about helping all Syrians. And we are actively doing whatever we can for that. That was not your question. Your question was about whether or not I could get containers in. I mean, have we had issues? We've had, sometimes there are issues at you know, like there might be a security issue with airstrikes. There are 2 different border crossings, so we have used one, and we have in a few cases used the second one. We have that as a backup, basically. You have to, like, it's a different drive, it's a different location. But those are like the major issues. I have actually one confession. There was one time, and it might be before New Day Syria, because I did 5 containers right before I founded New Day Syria. So I knew this couple in Texas, and they were doing a container, and I was doing a container. We were best buddies on Facebook, right? I mean, for Syria. So my container got mixed up with their container right at the border. Nothing to do with me. It was like the truck drivers. They mixed up the paperwork. So their container, loaded with food, went to a different area, went to, you know, people in need from my side. I mean, my side, whatever they were supposed to be going. And there are people who were expecting the food. They got clothes and a little bit of food. That has been the worst incident of, yeah. But we have never had like a mix-up after that, and I don't know how that particular mix-up happened, you know, with the paperwork.
I have a question. And how were you able to find people who like to join your organization? It's always like just what you said, one person at a time. It's always good to start simple. But sometimes, for myself, when I want to make an impact, like if it's just me, like sometimes I just lost motivation. So I want to ask, how can you find people to join your organization, and how were you able to find resources in order to like maintain this organization?
So you cannot have an organization if you're the only one that believes in your cause and in your mission, and you don't have any supporters, and everybody hates you. So that's obviously not possible. So by the time New Day Syria was founded, I had supporters, I had people who believed in my mission and the work I was already doing, so it was like an organic thing happening. You probably want to make sure, whatever your cause or your mission is, that you have support already before you start all the tedious paperwork and all that process of doing a nonprofit. I mean, if you really want to do it for the sake of being helpful, right? So creating relationships with donors, with supporters, with volunteers is a lot of work. I'm pretty sure that 25% of the people in this room are going to come out to a container just because they are intrigued, I'm charming, they want to come. So you do need to be charming, but in the end, when people, they can connect, when they can connect, when you are at a container, or even if you donate for particular things, and then you can go to our Facebook page because our website is outdated. My point is, when you can then see the pictures and the videos and you feel that there's something, it doesn't have to be fancy because we're not very fancy, then you feel connected. And you want to support more of that, you want to see more of that. That's how you get people to want more and to come back for more and to support you. Well, I do have a few kids and a husband. And then I do meet amazing people, and it becomes like an organic thing. People, they want to help and they want to do, and sometimes people are supporting us for a period of time. We have people that have been with us, in a volunteer role since the start, for example. So it's not really me, it's the mission, it's the cause, it's the outcome they see. Yeah.